Welcome to the Unlocking Wealth podcast. Thanks for joining us. We will motivate and inspire you as we share strategies from successful and wealthy individuals. Here is your host, David Ordonez, an entrepreneur and real estate investor.
Welcome to a new episode of the Unlocking Wealth podcast. As a real estate investor, it is very important that you choose the right partners, and it's essential to your success to select a good lender. We have trusted InstaLend for our lending needs, and they have become our preferred lender for our real estate investments.
InstaLend is your private lending partner, where you can get a loan commitment the same day and close within days. Grow your real estate portfolio with InstaLend. Tell us about your project. We lend on all product types, from short-term, fix and flip, and 30-year rental loans across single and multifamily properties. We also lend on ground-up construction and work with first-time and experienced operators. Our loan products are also available for foreign national investors. InstaLend, your preferred partner for an insta-good experience. For more information, visit instalend.com.
So today is with us Tran from Denver, Colorado. I met Vu a few months ago at a conference in Utah, and he's a young entrepreneur, leader. He currently has 12 short-term rentals. And so welcome, Vu. Appreciate you being here today.
Hey, it's nice to have me on here. So thanks for inviting me.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, just kind of wanted to dive into your story. Tell me a little bit of you. I mean, how did you get started in entrepreneurship and business activities? I mean, what was the force behind that pushed you to go to that space?
Yeah, well, sweet, David. Thanks for inviting me on here. And, I just want to give tons of value to all the listeners. David wanted me to talk about the short-term rentals and how I kind of got started into real estate. And really, I started investing in real estate just like a lot of you guys. Like, I had it as a personal home, and I bought my first property in 2015. And then when COVID happened, I had to pivot. So when I pivoted, we were having troubles because the mortgage payments were much higher than what you could actually rent it for. So I said, okay, why not the short-term rental space? It's scary when you first come in, people living in these houses, you don't know what's going to happen. But then we ended up just popping up a bunch of short-term rentals, and the money that was coming in, I thought it was going to be fake money. It's like $12,000, $23,000 a month, and it completely changes your life. And I always encourage everybody to start off in the short-term rental space. Right? I got properties in Sacramento, San Diego, throughout Colorado, and I've helped people propped up their own short-term rentals in Arizona and in Texas, like the San Antonio area. And people loosely use the word short-term rental as like an Airbnb, but really it can be pivoted in different areas. And I think, a lot of people get scared because of the municipalities that have restrictions or HOAs that have restrictions. And I had to pivot to it too, right? You get fines and you get slapped on the wrist. And what I did was that I just changed my settings to 30 plus days, contacted insurance companies, did traveling nurses. And, when I was first making just off the short-term rentals, $30,000 in cash flow a month, it completely changed the way I thought about things, right? Yeah. You thought about it as an actual business. Yeah. And it's fairly not hard to get into. It's just, the hardest thing is having your mindset shift to that, because when someone wants to book for 6 months and they're renting it at $8,000 to $10,000 a month, you're like, why would someone do that? The reason why people do that is because you have construction companies that fly in from Florida or flying from Texas and go to Sacramento or, Denver, and they need a bunch of places to stay. So instead of paying, $150 to $250 per person, now they're consolidating 8 people in one house. So that's
now when you okay, so just to back up a little bit, when you started on the short-term rental, kind of like you had to pivot up right after COVID, right? So tell us a little bit about the first experience, right? Because some of our listeners will say, yeah, I mean, it sounds great, but how do I start if I want to start into the short-term rental space? Because I know there's different ways you can actually acquire the property, or you can also lease the property, and then you turn around and you lease it as a short-term rental, right?
Yeah. So when I first started off, like I was doing fix and flips, and I started acquiring a bunch of properties. And what I found out was that I was a poor real estate investor. What that meant was that I was equity heavy, but I was cash flow poor. And every real estate investor will always go through that state. And that's the reason why people start pivoting into funds and raising money. So when I bought a property for about $1 million, after the renovations, we spent about $400,000 into that. I was like, okay, how can we cash flow this? Because I was using different loan products, which are like DSCR loans, which are non-conventional loans that don't require any type of income or taxes. And you put either anywhere between 15 to 20% down. And some of them will actually cover the actual construction costs as long as the, ARV, is appropriate, or the rentals around the area are appropriate. So when I was getting started, I was actually working on a property that was a 3-unit in Denver, which my total expenses were about $10,000 a month. So I had to pivot. So I basically furnished the whole place, and people were booking for me for $6,000 to $8,000 per unit. And that's how I got started. I was actually using DSCR loans, which I was putting 15 to 20% down, but I knew the upside.
Is there any restriction on certain lenders for short-term rentals?
Well, it depends on the type of lender that you use, and you could find your local brokers, but they have different loan products for different things. Like if they already have an actual Airbnb up, because you don't know how you're going to pivot, right? You might just buy it as an investment. You might just rent each individual room. But what I found was that was just too much of work for me. I consider myself as a lazy investor. I just like to set it up and just collect the cash and, hire my cleaners and my handyman and give them a good enough. You take care of your team. The rental arbitrage is something that I actually have never gotten into, but I have friends that have like 30, 40, 50 units in Texas, right? And they have them in California. And what they do is, it's pretty unique and it's pretty cool, because what they do is that they do master leases. And if you're really doing it right, there's big companies like big private equity funds called like Sonder, where they go into a new apartment complex and they say, hey, you know what? I want to do a master lease of 10 to 30 units. So what they'll do is that they'll sign a master lease, they'll negotiate a price, and they'll fully furnish every single room, and they'll run it as short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals. Yeah, it's a great business.
So they're making, $1,000 to $5,000 a month, depending on the actual market. But for me, I always like to hold on to properties because I saw how well it appreciated. So it's a lot, it's very easy for people to actually raise money from their friends and family and put a 20% down payment. What lenders really look for is for the experience, right? So if you're not experienced, then find someone that's experienced and tell them to go in the deal with you, right? Furnish the place. Yep. The other big one was the one in Sacramento that we had. That one was a 3-bedroom, had one formal dining room and living room. I fully furnished that place in 2 days. I literally flew down there when the restrictions were at its highest. I got lucky because there was an Amazon warehouse, and what they did was that they did like the open boxes, and I bought like mattresses for $200, and I fully furnished the whole thing from laundry room to everything in 2 days. So we were hot on the market, and our first couple bookings was like, so we were doing well. Like we're doing the short-term rental, and we were doing like $12,000 to $23,000 a month, right? Our total expenses was probably roughly around $4,500.
Okay. Now, how do you select the markets? You're talking about San Diego, Sacramento. Obviously, those are great markets. How do you, when you're going to or you're looking to acquire another property to maybe turn it into a short term, what do you look on that market? I mean, what's your criteria on looking or seeking properties?
So the property in Sacramento, we weren't even planning on doing a short-term rental. We were going to do the long rental space what I really look for is new developments. What type of jobs are coming into there, right? Is it big tech? Is it medical? Is it, aerospace? Is it, look at the big industries, because what you're doing is that you got to follow the money and what the income is, right?
Correct.
But honestly, short-term rentals works in any space. And because sometimes it might not be short-term, because short-term is considered 30 or less days. But if you do anything that's 30 plus days, that's okay too. People rent 30 plus days fully furnished. Like the house we have in Colorado Springs, that one rents $3,000 to $4,000 a month. But the markets that I always try to look for is new developments. What the development plan is happening in the cities, like what their 10-year projection is and how much money they're actually pouring for the developments. Like I think Nashville is great.
Okay.
I think Dallas is great. Like I think Las Vegas is great. Like Las Vegas is still booming. So I look at areas where they have high job growths, but at the same time, what type of jobs? Are they white collar? Are they blue collar? How supportive are they in businesses? Because you're going to have those challenges. Like the city of Denver now is starting to have restrictions where you have to have an inspection annually to even rent your house long term, right? So you're dealing with those types of issues. But yeah, to start off the short-term rentals, if you want to get started off, just find someone in your local neighborhood that you're currently living. Talk to the owners, tell them that you own a business and you run a corporate rental business and you would like to rent their house out at a premium with a 2 to 3 year lease, put a down payment down, or even partner up with the homeowners. And just, like I say, in any type of business that you go in, with all the businesses that I run, is you have to test it out to see if it works. And if it works, then press on it. If not, then it doesn't hurt you for you to pull back, right? It's a good lesson learned.
It's very good. That's a very good advice. Because you test the water first. If the business starts working, then you can start scaling and pressing on it. Now, how do you, so you choose the markets, obviously, that you specified. You're looking for development, job growth, and then is there, because within the short-term space, there's so many options, like you mentioned before, right? You have more of the vacation home where people lease as a short-term just for leisure. Then you have corporate rentals. Is there any strategy that you use or you pick where that market that you're going to target, or you kind of keep it a little more like the property will be leased to any of this or any of the above, or do you a specific target corporate or nurses, or how do you determine that? Is depending obviously on the market as well?
Well, what my current platform and what we do is we go into areas where they have higher restrictions, because we like to do 30 plus days, right?
Okay.
So the Denver area will do 30 plus days. The city, the HOAs can't really do anything because it's a 30 plus day as long as you have a lease signed, right? But you got to look in the CCNRs and what the HOA says, because if they specifically say that you can't post on VRBO or Airbnb, then that's a hard restriction. But then you could go on like Furnish Finders, or you could just contact insurance companies that actually place people. Or something big that we were doing is, houses that we were buying for like $350, we were renting them out for about $7,000 when the Afghani grant came through. So that one came through, and we contacted groups that basically place Afghanis that were coming into the U.S. And the ones near the hospitals were great. So they were paying us $7,000 a month. But however, you got a bunch of foreigners here, and, they're trying to find things. So your blow jars will end up missing and a bunch of things will miss, but just, count that as an actual business expense.
Correct.
So there's a lot of different ways to pivot. And, people are even renting out their houses, like old houses, to people that produce movies. Like there might be a house that's in the 80s or 90s that's completely old with pink tubs, and people want that type of authentic house to be able to film it. Or people that want to film inside of your house to, do a podcast. People do that too. So there's a lot of different ways to leverage your properties to make money. And it's just not in the Airbnb or the VRBO space. But, like I told people this 2.5 years ago, I said, real estate right now is not an amateur sport. It's a professional sport. So you have to learn how to pivot to the markets that you're going to, or else you're just going to dry yourself. You're going to, like basically bleed dry. And it's
So
about that creativity of like being an
creativity,
entrepreneur.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna tell. I mean, in order to do that, you gotta have that entrepreneurial mindset to be creative and come up with different solutions and overcome obstacles that come your way. Yeah, that's very interesting. Now, as you are doing your short-term rentals, you're also involved as a leader in entrepreneurship, and I know you are also coaching students on IFS, which is Investment Fund Secrets, to help them launch funds. So tell me a little bit about that and your role as a leader and on that program.
Yeah. So the two passions that I really have is leadership development, what I learned through the Marine Corps for the time that I was in, and also, entrepreneurship. Like that's the reason why I always tell people that there's three bottom lines. It's how much money you make, who you connect with, and how many people you help. Right? It's the surroundings, but you have to be able to give back. To kind of pivot into your question is, something that we're planning on doing locally is that we're going to do a 1-day course and we're going to teach middle schoolers and high schoolers on how to launch and grow their business. And then from there, we're going to show them the fun side on how to raise money for venture capital, right? And even myself, I'll invest in these small businesses. It might be, snow removal, or it might be landscaping, or it might be car detailing, or it might be something even crazier, right? Creating a product or service and shipping it overseas. But, one of our initiatives in the next 12 months is to be able to do 100 students that are projected to make about $100,000 in revenue a year. So if I could have these kids in schools learn about the foundational things about entrepreneurship and leadership development, the reason why we live in the best country in the world is like that will pivot further than ever. So, I was a student just like everybody else in Investment Fund Secrets because I wanted to learn how to raise money and get to that bigger level, right? Be like the Ray Dalios of the world where they're running a $180 billion fund.
Yep.
Where, for myself, my parents escaped Vietnam and, they were pizza delivery drivers, and my dad became an engineer, an entrepreneur, and real estate investor. And, how do we pivot to that higher level? So that's the reason why I, committed and volunteered to be a coach to teach people about communicating your offer and pitching, right? So then you could raise money to get, buy large apartment complexes or triple net leases, or doing land developments in different parts of the world and connect with the best, right? And that's how I connected with David, right? And how he's starting his fund to raise money for his apartments, right? And it's just that pivotal state, and how do we continually learn to be ongoing students? So I knew that the value that I learned in the Marine Corps and while I was speaking on stages and teaching people how to launch and grow their businesses was people didn't really have a basic structure on communicating your offer or knowing type of disciplines, right? Like seeding. Like seeding is the ability to kind of, plant an idea into people's minds. Mm-hmm. So how do you talk about like, hey, you know what? Like I do restaurants or I do short-term rentals and this is the type of returns I get, right? It makes them intrigued, like, I was always thinking about doing that. Mm-hmm. But you're always thinking about like what's in it for them. Like, how do you tell them like it's easy, right? Like when I talked to David, I was like, David, like you should shift and turn your single family homes into, short-term rentals or corporate rentals, right? Just test it out and see, right? Why sell your properties and drive all your money into multifamily unit when you could generate just as much? Like for me with my restaurants, I'm putting anywhere between $60,000 to $500,000 into opening a restaurant, right? With a 15 to 26% profit margin. But when you're getting into short-term rentals, let's say you buy a $300,000 house, you're putting $60,000 down and probably like another $15,000 to $25,000.
Furnish it.
And you have equity and you're building equity and you're building cash flow. It's the easiest business that you can get into, right? The restaurants to me is about connecting with the most people. How do I connect with car dealerships? How do I connect with the Chamber of Commerce? How do I create programs that create entrepreneurship? And, Investment Fund Secrets, like those guys, they're super young and ambitious. They got strong core values and they're really there to kind of communicate and offer where they want to help people get to that next level, because the fun world of raising money for real estate, people would loosely call it syndications, right? Uh-huh. And, how do you do it properly? How do you follow through the Securities and Exchange Commission? How do you create your legal structure? How do you create a pitch? So, we're teaching close to 300 and something students, I think, don't quote me on that, on how to communicate your offer and seeing what structures, right? Do you want accredited investors? Do you want non-accredited investors?
Yep.
Who's your captured audience? And, some of these students are awesome. They've raised over $2.5 billion in 18 months.
Which is
And
crazy.
it's just like a video I watched, right? It's like, don't block yourself in a room, because what you say, what you see, and what you hear becomes who you are. So just keep your mind open. And I think the group that we're all a part of in Investment Fund Secrets is a very supportive environment, where people are learning how to be the titans, the Spartans of an entrepreneur.
Yeah. The importance of going back to the raising capital, right, and selling and pitching your idea and seeding, it goes far beyond with the ultimate goal, especially for us that want to scale our businesses to a next level and raise millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. But even when you're starting out, especially for some of our listeners that are thinking about starting with a real estate investment or a short-term rental, the importance of learning how to sell and how to communicate your idea to someone that can partner with you, and probably you don't have the cash to invest, but maybe you can plant a seed and sell them the idea to invest with you those $60,000 so you can do your first deal. And from that moment, I think once you do that first deal, it just becomes so much easier, right?
Yes, I think it's about the confidence. You have to build your confidence up. And honestly, I would suggest to every single person starting in real estate or starting a business is find a good mentor. Right? Like find a good mentor and work for free. Like people
How was your experience in terms of mentorship? Did you have somebody or still have someone that you consider your mentor? How did you connect with that person, and how critical was him or her for you?
Yes, I'm a big self-development guy. I probably spend 6 figures on self-development on an annual basis. I'm actually going to the 10X conference on Tuesday night.
Nice.
And I'm always trying to learn, because I tell people this thing, right? It's about being like a professional athlete, where you got to show up to either the boxing ring or the football field or the basketball court with confidence that you're going to win. But at the same time, you have to be humble enough to adjust to your opponent or adjust to yourself. So for me, I always had a big struggle finding a mentor throughout my entire life. I was like disappointed, like one person might be good at this, but they didn't have good ethics, or one person might be really good in business, but their health was completely screwed up. Until I went to the self-development course and I rose my hand, and I was just in this thing. I was like, how do you find a good mentor? And he said, you don't find one particular mentor, you find multiple mentors that are good with different things. There might be one person that's extremely good with relationships, then you find that person as your relationship mentor. One person with business or real estate, like yourself, if I was in your area and if I was first starting off, I'd say, hey, you know what, David, how do I learn about real estate, right? Or if I wanted to learn about social media, I would find that type of mentor. So what I kind of call them is your board of advisors, right? Once you start learning about the fund space, right?
Yep.
But for me, I have multiple mentors for different things. I have guys that have ran, super successful businesses that I can call and ask them about business structures, or how do you divvy up your partnerships, or how do you create phantom shares, or, someone in the tech space that knows about SaaS systems. I have someone that I'll call, or social media. And you have to find in life, you have to find your board of advisors, because those are your mentors, right? So for me, my peers could be my mentors too, from different states, and sometimes you got to have that person to lean on and be humble enough to be able to make that phone call and say, hey, how are you dealing with these struggles of food cost? Or how are you dealing with these struggles with the restrictions that are coming into your municipality? Or how do you pivot with either refinancing your house or selling your house? And, how are you dealing with the tax implications, right? Because in California, you're paying almost close to 50% in taxes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So finding a mentor is an
I
ongoing
agree with you. You find different mentors in different stages of your life, right?
Yep.
And sometimes we try to find mentors that are successful. But I have found personally that sometimes a mentor can be someone that actually wasn't successful and made a lot of mistakes, right? Because it teaches you other lessons of life. It doesn't have to be a business mentor. It can be a life mentor as well. So, but I agree with you. We can feed ourselves with different mentors throughout our life. And the self-development, I think, is, you touch on that, and I think that is so key. And I feel some people just don't do that enough. Self-development, self-learning keeps you going, and in a way you can become your own mentor as well.
Something that I'll actually share is the most expensive course that I've ever paid for was over $60,000 in real estate. And I'm telling you, it was stuff that I already knew. And honestly, I was above most people that were in that room that were just learning, right? They were teaching about wholesaling and all these other things, which I read in a book, and it was the same type of content. And I would go back and do it all over again. Why? It's because I'm betting on myself to be successful. And the mentality that I've always had is that, is this the last $60,000 that am I going to make? Because if you are limiting yourself, like, how can I not spread all my credit cards out to buy that? And how am I going to be able to write $1 million check? How am I going to be able to write a $10 million check? And that's the mentality that I had throughout my entrepreneurship and my real estate, is that you have to have that mentality, is that you have to normalize that process. So if you're going in and you're, first starting off, and, $10,000 is a lot of money, then, do it, because that's not the last $10,000 that you're going to make. And I think that too many people burn bridges on the first deal because they're so stuck, because they think that that's the last amount of money they make. I'm willing to go into business with anybody and put $50,000, $100,000, because if I lose that money with that person, that was the cheapest mistake I've ever made. Because I'm not planning on making 10,000, 20,000, 100,000. I want to be able to build these strong relationships where my family and my kids are going to be networked with them. So then their family is going to be like my kids' mentors. So how do you see this with long-term legacy, right? How do you build where you're next to the Carnegies or the Rockefellers, or, with the political parties, and where you're actually, making a big difference? And I think people just think too small-minded, and you got to act as like, okay, if you go into this deal and you put $5,000 into it, you get to gauge and see how well I do business with David, right? How well I do business with James.
Now, how do you expand your mindset? I mean, I agree 100% on what you say, but how do we tell people, or how do we mentor people on what tools do we give them so they can expand their mentality, where those $5,000 or $10,000 are not? It's like you said, it's not about the amount of money that you're putting into that. It's about increasing your mindset that, well, with those $10,000 probably it's not going to be my last $10,000 I'm going to make, right? But how do you help people to change that mindset?
I think it breaks down to a couple of different things. Like, I think it's one, building that confidence. And entrepreneurs like me and you are the most insecure ones ever. But what we do is that we build that tolerance to build that confidence. So when we walk into a room, we're confident that we can deal with it, right? It's just like the Marines, right? Like, Marines convinced themselves to be number one, and eventually they ended up setting themselves up to a high standard to not fail. So I think one thing is knowing that it's okay to feel insecure and scared, but know that you're smart enough to figure out the solutions. And a mentor once told me, a chief warrant officer when I was in the Marine Corps doing intel work, he said, "Vu, there's only two decisions in life that you can make. Ones you can live with, and ones you regret. So if you make a decision that you can live with, then that's okay. Then just make the decision." And something that my dad taught me is that don't get emotionally connected with money, because it's called financial intelligence in a standpoint where it's like your emotions, right? So if you're emotionally attached to money, you're going to have issues, because now that greed comes in and all those other things. But money is just energy, right? So if you're able to just limit yourself, it's like, this is not money that was meant for me anyways. It's something that creates something even bigger, right? So when I've gone into bigger deals where we're writing $200,000 or $300,000 checks of myself, it's like I'm kind of immune to it now, because now I want to be able to write a $10 million check out of my own bank account, because Now it's like, that's not the last 10, like I'm telling you, just use that phrase. This is not the last whatever dollar amount that I'm going to spend. And if people think about it, right? They bought expensive cars or watches or belts, or they've done this and that. Do you still remember it? You don't, right? You forget about it. You know, it's a temporary thing. It's like the most expensive thing. You buy a laptop for $2,000-$3,000. Do you even really remember it at the end of the day? No, you're thinking about the present and the future time frame. So just believe in yourself and really invest in yourself. And there is no lesson in life, no matter if people could, there's no such thing as failures. They're just lessons in life.
I agree with
right?
that. Yep.
The
seminars in life. The failures, I think, are just setbacks for greater comebacks. If you really look at it like that. What are a couple books that you can recommend? You're a big self development guy, so I'm sure you have a bunch of books you've read. A couple that for real estate, maybe for pitching your ideas, and self development, personal development.
I think for real estate, the book would be, I think it's called If I Can't Teach You How to Wholesale After This, Then I Don't Know What to Tell You. And that's probably not exactly what it is, but if you just go on Amazon and you check it up, it's a purple book. It's an awesome book when you want to learn, about real estate and different types of contracts. One of the self-help books that kind of helped me was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Great book.
Right, that was a good one. And learning the difference between, employees, self-employees, business owners, and investors is Robert Kiyosaki's book, Cash Flow Quadrant.
Yep.
Was a really good one. And I think, getting on a deeper level would probably be like emotional intelligence, learning about like delayed gratification and all those things. But yeah, like I think, just complete impacts in life. Like the more I read, like I read all the time, it's a requirement for my team to read. Like we're reading, like I'm rereading because of Michael Bonovic's podcast. I'm rereading Miracle Morning, right? Because I read that a long time ago, but it's when you reread something, you're in a different course of your life, so the information's actually a little bit more senior.
And sometimes at different stages of your life, right? I mean, I've read books that had certain impact 5 years ago, and I reread it again now, and it has a different impact. I mean, it's it depends on where you are at that moment, but. Thanks for sharing. Those are great books. So what's the next step for VU? What are your plans for this year? I know you're launching a fund as well. So tell me a little about your fund. How do you see your future involvement with IFS? Where you want to take your short-term rental business to? Share that with us.
Yeah, so my business is broken down in a couple different things. It's broken down into real estate side, but it's vertically integrated with my construction company where we do unfinished basements and like unfinished work. We want to be able to just kind of consolidate that, because I think that investing in real estate now is, if you're doing fix and flipping, I'd rather do your construction and make money that way. It's a lot lower risk. But, in the next 5 years, we're planning on doing 50 restaurants in the next 5 years, wrap that up and sell it to a private equity fund for 150 million. So we're going to be having like close to 12 restaurants that are going to be opened up in the next 12 months. So with the fund, we're really focusing on land developments, either the Boise, Boise, Idaho. I'm actually working with one of the members, part of Investment Fund Secrets, and we're looking into Seattle. So he's bringing me some juicy deals. He's got to put me a seat on the board though, and then some things with like Ryan Miller, we're looking at some venture capital stuff into the green energy and, more of the tech side of things. So, just continually build the restaurants out. My real estate is kind of like my long-term wealth. And, I consider Investment Fund Secrets as my family. I always tell them to, abuse me as much as they can, to teach their sales team or, just help out students, because I'm going to teach them what I'm good at. And then I'm going to go to people like David for certain types of things that they're good at. And that's what I like about the environment. But that's my goal, and personally, I think I got to focus on my health a little bit more this year, on a
Okay.
personal level, and just give back more this year,
Yeah,
give back
that's
more to the
always good.
community. Yep.
Yeah, that's so important, right? It's that self fulfillment that you're giving back. Um, in terms of the, are you planning to expand a little bit more on your short term rentals? Go to different markets, maybe.
Yeah. So I pivoted. So my brother, he actually works for the mortgage company that I'm managing, where we do loans in Colorado and in California. So what I'm starting to do is I take my portfolio and I'm going to be giving them 20, 25% of managing that entire project because,
Oh, good.
I can't manage these 8 other companies. And, once he gets tired of it, he could pass it on to somebody else. And I'll still get my
Delegation.
check. Yes, I'll get my check. The short-term rental space, I'm still, you know, if we're going to start building this apartment with 64 units here with 5,000 square feet of retail, I'll probably take a quarter of those, about a dozen of them or so, and turn them into short-term rentals because I think that there's still a good market in that. Or when we're doing these land developments, I'd like to keep one or two to just see where the markets are because, if you're putting 10, 20% down and you're cash flowing another five to $10,000 a month, like that's a salary. You're making anywhere between some of my friends I've had them started, they're making anywhere between 20 to $100,000 off of one property. That's an
That's
income.
crazy. Yeah. Oh, of course. That's is insane. The opportunities are unlimited, and what I love about the short-term rental, specifically going back to that space, is that it just opens up so many options when you can get creative with. Now, what are your thoughts on you're in real estate space as well? What are your thoughts on what's going on right now? I mean, obviously, we're seeing crazy prices, low inventory levels, historically low inventory levels in properties. Prices keep appreciating. I think 18-20% over last year. What's your take on it? I mean, recently last week we saw a little increase on the interest rate. What do you see for 2022?
What I see is what people don't look at, and I look at things, I adjust myself from a macro view and then go into micro. I think the big thing that's happening globally right now is a currency war. Like it's not any other war about anything else. It's about currency and who has the power of currency. When it comes down in a micro view, I think interest rates are going to continue to grow. I think that there's still going to be a shortage in single family homes. I think more people are going to start renting, because of the interest rates. There's going to be even a bigger gap between, the wealthy and the poor, just because everything's going up in prices. You get gas prices for $7 to $9. You cut the pipeline project that they have. So, and then the currency of them accepting Chinese dollars to purchase oils. But I think that the market in the United States is so strong that the real estate side of it is still going to be growing. Like I'm not going to stop into it. I think things are just going to change when it comes to the rental prices. There might be rent limitations for long-term rentals. But interest rates are still low. We just broke through 4%. Yes, we just broke through 4% and we're going to work up to 5%. But when I first bought my house,
still lower than inflation, so you're still ahead. When you're borrowing money for less of what the rate of inflation is, you're actually ahead every year.
Yeah, and absolutely. Like last year I bought about a dozen homes outside of my short-term rentals, and most of those properties have made me at least $100,000 per house. Right, so the appreciation game is still there because you have to keep in mind is that 40% of the U.S. currency just got printed out in the last 24 months. You have the digital space that's completely disrupting the entire financial world, right? Where people are buying shoes and like my buddy Andy from California, he's changing up the food scene, which is, we're working on a partnership right now. He bought a Bored Ape, and what he's doing is that he's using that Bored Ape to make a burger concept called Bored and Hungry, and he's branding it, right? So I wouldn't be scared. Look at big private equity and see what they're doing. They're investing in single family homes. There's still big groups that are still investing in short-term rentals. The multi-family space, like Grant Cardone just closed on a $750 million apartment complex deal. So I think the market in Las Vegas, the market across the U.S., there's still foreign dollars that are coming into the U.S.
Yeah.
So don't be scared. Just make sure that you're a little cautious and, take leaps on where you need to. My director of ops kind of taught me, it was like, you can't tell people it's that easy, because for me, I become overly confident. So to me, something that's easy for someone that's starting off is completely different from somebody that's been doing this for a while. So my tolerance is much higher.
Correct. And that's why I always ask to kind of give tools to people that are not there yet, right? That they're trying to make that choice, or they're trying to move into that first investment, or they're trying to get out of that comfort zone of that 9-to-5 job, or make that leap. And exactly, I mean, those are the little tools that we can share with them so they can take that step towards that first investment, first business, etc. What are your thoughts in terms of, and this goes back to mindset, top 3, and I know there's plenty, but your top 3 skills to work on, to develop, to become good at business, entrepreneurship, networking, selling? What do you think are that we have to master?
Well, everybody says it's across the board, and I don't want it to be so generic, but being like really grateful for what you have, because even saying that word kind of gives me the chills, because if you're a person of faith, or if you're a person of like the universe, or you want to align your chakras, at the end of the day, it's about being grateful for what you have, because honestly, our problems that we have today are really not that bad, right? When you really think about it, like the problems that we have are nothing compared to what it is, right? We're breathing. We could go off and get food. We could go to McDonald's and get a $2 or $3 meal. Like there's a lot of things to be grateful for. And, I think that's most important, because it really gives you that blissful power to be able to do things. So just being grateful for your day-to-day life. Sometimes when you look at it, you got to take a deep breath and just look at it and be like, you know what, things aren't as bad as they are, right? Yeah. And they'll be fine. I'm going to make it to the next day. Another mindset thing to have is challenge yourself. You want to suck less. So challenge yourself. And, so our 3 core values is courage, commitment, and integrity. That's part of our actual company, right? And the word courage is really having, facing adversity even when you don't want to. There's so many times every single day when someone calls me and I don't want to pick up because I already know it's going to be something bad, or it's going to be some sort of challenge. What do? I pick up that phone right away. Or when I have to deal with some sort of issue, or, pay a fat invoice, or, deal with some sort of, legal issue because, someone's doing some sort of claim on you, I try to just have the courage and say I have to deal with it. I can't be a coward, right? So having the courage in everything that you do, even if it's hard conversations, just have them. Be a professional, and being committed in doing it. Because when you're a leader, like for myself, I'm not working for myself. I'm working for my team. So you got to have that courage. And if you're working for your family, or if you're working for your friends, or if you're working for whoever, what I mean by that is that so many people are relying on just you as a person to have that courage and that high level of integrity, and, have that influence in them, inspire them to do things. And then of course, having integrity, because what you say comes out of your mouth, you don't own it anymore. And just living in that high level of integrity where you're just being honest. Like I try to live my life like a politician, because I might run for president in like 30 years. Right. So
I like that.
but it's the truth. You got to shake hands and, kiss babies, but don't do it in a very genuine way. Like you really do like care about people. Don't just put up that, I call it the stage face of being somebody else, because what you see is what you get, David. This is who I am. Like I'm nowhere different. If you sit and hang out with me in my living room, or go smoke a cigar with me, or when we're in Vegas and we're going to be racing cars, like I'm still the same person that I am. And it's always about consistency and results. Who you are today will not define who you are in the future. And people are too stuck on their past. Yeah. So like, that's what I would say, is that don't get caught up on where you are today. Know that no matter where you are in your life, everybody's trying to figure it out. And you could always change in who you are today, but you have to show that consistency and results to build that credibility, because you are the marketing piece. How can someone do a PR piece on you and be proud of you? How can you be that good husband or wife when you get married that someone could stand up and talk about you and say, you know what? Like when David's wife stands up, it's like, I couldn't do it without him, right? He was such an amazing guy. He's been so supportive. Like, that's how you have to live your life. Like, you're going to give that speech for that person, or that person will say that speech to you. Or
I read just to add that to what you just said. I read a book that says, always think about what they're going to say in your funeral.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Yeah, and live your life as how you would like them to address you when you're in your funeral. So, no, I agree with everything you said. Vu, thank you so much for sharing your strategies. Your mindset is amazing. All these good things, good advices that you share with us I think are going to make a big difference to the people that have listened to this podcast. So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today, and I will see you here in Vegas in a couple of weeks for the fund event.
Yes, we'll be there in the week, and if you guys want to follow me, I'm going to have a social media manager too, but my Instagram is the only Vu Tran, VUTRAN. And honestly, David, thanks for everything. And, you're an amazing person. And if you guys have any real estate questions, you guys got to connect with this guy. Force him to go speak on some stages in Las Vegas. It's good people. Him and his wife are amazing people, and we really connected when we were in Utah. And, I can't wait to, see a lot of people in your community be successful. And I would like them to kind of shoot in. And if they have questions, I'm more than welcome to answer them. And, I can't wait to see what happens this year.
I appreciate it, Vu. Thanks for sharing your information on social media, and thanks again, man.
Okay, thank you. I'll talk to you soon.